Thank you for the introduction, Mike. Hello, everybody. Warhammer appears in many shapes, books, in video games, and obviously as a tabletop war game, which is its original avatar. Miniatures are where the money lies for Games Workshop. Despite the video games, despite the books, one could argue that all the licensed products are a way of getting people to buy miniatures, which is the most profitable. So all the other products, the licensed products, are sort of derivatives of the miniatures, and the color codes that Games Workshop uses to advertise its miniatures are, of course, found in the derivatives. So I think it is pertinent as academics to consider that the box art of Warhammer products has a considerable influence on all the other products, the video games in particular. So that is what I would like to talk about today. What does Games Workshop do with color? What role does color play in Warhammer 40K in its commercial and cultural aspects? So I'll very quickly define color. I won't be spending much time on that one. I will use Michel Pastoureau's series of History of the Color books to get a historical perspective on color and the evolution of color connotations through history and influence in the contemporary world and Warhammer, obviously. And talk about the color blue, because it's the color of the Ultramarines, the famous poster boys, so it's not possible to talk about color in Warhammer and not mention them. And then I will talk about the color red, which is, in my opinion, at least, a very, very interesting color, because it is the color of both the Blood Angels and the World Eaters. And I will talk about those in detail. And I'll briefly mention the Red Gobbo, because it is a very interesting case of a shift in color symbolism. So, what is color? Physically, color is different wavelengths of light. The first scholarly interest for color began in the 17th century. So Newton was obviously the godfather of optics and of color theory. I am not going to go into those aspects. There's many aspects in which a physical or a chemical analysis of color and pigment would be extremely relevant to Warhammer and Games Workshop, especially since Games Workshop is facing more and more competitors on the paint market, the army painter notably. But that is a completely different talk. I will instead limitate myself on color as a cultural phenomenon, at something that is seen, produced, and interpreted in many, many different ways through time and space, obviously. I will draw heavily on Michel Pastoureau's History of the Color series. So it's in the name. It's a series of essays on the history of different colors. The first book, Blue, got published in 2000, and Pink is fairly recent. It got published last year. So he's not a young man anymore, but as far as I know, he still has some projects there. So we might be seeing further colors in the coming years. There is one major limitation to Pastoureau's study. He focuses exclusively on Europe, on Western Christianity in particular. So when he talks about the religious use of color, he means exclusively Catholicism and Protestantism. So Eastern Orthodoxy, he doesn't talk about it. It's simply not his field. So that's the major limitation. And however, for Warhammer, considering that, well, it obviously originated in the UK, but more importantly, I should say, the main markets for Warhammer are, well, the US, the UK, and continental Europe. So the color codes that people, consumers in those countries are familiar with is the one that is relevant to Games Workshop. So the color blue. Blue starts its success story fairly late in the 13th century only. Before that, for many reasons, red was the overall mainstream color in Greek antiquity, in Roman antiquity, in the early medieval period. Red was standard, and we'll talk more about that later. So from the 13th century on, it becomes the regal and Marian color. So kings start wearing blue, the kings of France most notably. It starts becoming the color of the Virgin Mary, which had not been the case before. And it's not entirely clear where that shift comes from. So obviously there's technological progress. You can reach deeper, more reliable, cheaper blues as well. But this technological progress did not happen out of thin air. Somehow there must have been demand for production methods to become more efficient. And there's several hypotheses on why that happened, but there is no clear answer yet. The success of blue also continued because it was accepted by the Reformation. So the Protestant Reformation was extremely skeptical of all colors, which were associated with the luxury of the Catholic Church, the wealth of the Catholic Church, the papacy most notably. Red was and still is, by the way, the color of the cardinals. The Pope was never dressed in white, always in red. So was the Emperor, the Holy Roman Emperor. And the Reformation was very much against that and accepted black as a formal regal color and tolerated blue, and it virtually banned everything else. So that obviously played a major part in the UK as well. From the 18th century onwards, blue becomes more and more associated with uniforms. So that's when navy blue begins to appear. Also, several land armies begin to dye their uniforms blue, the Prussian army most notably. And today, blue has sort of become a gamers would say vanilla color, so normal, acceptable, regular. When you wear formal or semi-formal dress, you wear blue typically. It is when one decides what to wear, or when one decides to choose a PowerPoint layout, blue never is a mistake. So, the Space Smurfs, the Ultramarines. So, it's again in the name, they are actually named after a particular type of blue, the famous Ultramarine. They're ubiquitous. They've been present in 5 out of 8 starter boxes, including the iconic Battle for Macragge. They're the main protagonists in the Space Marine series of video games. So that's titled Space Marine 1, Space Marine 2, which are by far the biggest selling video games Warhammer has licensed, particularly Space Marine 2. They are portrayed as literally by the book elite soldiers. So their Primarch, Robert Guilliman, is the author of the Codex Astartes. There's many references to the Roman Empire, particularly its military organization, tight ranks, everything well ordered, super clean, and especially among older fans, a bit boring. That's at least how they are sometimes considered. The references to the Roman Empire also includes their names. So this Lieutenant Titus, well, again, the name of a Roman emperor, several possibly, and many other famous Romans. It was a very common name associated with people of power. The Ultramarines are, for many people, the first access point to Warhammer. Essentially, you buy or you get as a present a starter box. There's going to be Ultramarines in it. You buy a start painting box. There's an Ultramarine in it. You walk into a Warhammer shop, say, "Hey, I'm starting Warhammer. Can I get a free model?" It's either Stormcast Eternal or a Space Marine, well, which you're then encouraged to paint blue as an Ultramarine. I would argue that it provides people, customers, with a feeling of familiarity. This color blue is simply not shocking. It's something that there's scars everywhere and it's bloody and you have those superhuman soldiers. But this color is appealing. They look nice. And Marcus pointed out yesterday that blue is also the color of several police forces. So yeah, they are viewed as figures of authority, but in a way that is not daunting, at least, and wouldn't go as far as saying it's welcome, but one is certainly not put off by their color scheme. Now, let's come to the color red. As I briefly mentioned, from antiquity to 13th century, red was everywhere in Europe, and its main association was with power. So I mentioned the clothes of the emperor, of the pope. Various lords were dressed in red, and it also played an extremely important part in Christian iconography. So in the blood of Christ, obviously, which in Christianity is extremely important in rituals. It has a huge theological significance. It has an opposite, of course, the impure blood. So we talked about gender issues. So the early medieval period, at least the texts that we still have are mostly church texts, and they're awfully misogynistic. So the female blood, menstrual blood in particular, is god-awful. It's absolutely horrible, and so that blood is not okay. So the blood of Christ is great. The blood of women is not, clearly. The color red is, of course, associated as well with prostitution. Still is. So red light district, for instance. There was, however, a huge difference in the medieval period between, obviously, the red of all those who were impure, so not just prostitutes, but also executioners, knackers, etc., often had to wear the color red. But it was a desaturated red. Often the clothes would not be dyed very well. There would be patches or streaks, and that would have been done on purpose, not just to save money. And that, to the medieval mind, was extremely important. It wasn't just about color. One wouldn't talk about red or blue necessarily. One would say a deep color, a rich color, wealthy color, which was in many ways more important than pigmentation, strictly speaking. In the 19th century, of course, the color red becomes associated with revolutionary movements. So I'm not going to go into the whole history, but the red flag essentially becomes a strong political statement in 1848, when for a very brief moment it had a chance of becoming the colors of the Second French Republic. In the end, they did keep the famous French flag, so blue, white, red, but red had this short window of opportunity. So now that we've introduced the color red, let's talk about the blood angels. And again, it's in the name, so it's blood everywhere and angelicism everywhere. So they look like angels. This figure, the sanguiner, which is this sort of half mythical entity which appears only in times of dire need, is holding something that looks very much like a holy grail. It has wings. Their Primarch Sanguinius has wings. Their captains have a halo around their head. So you find many aspects of this Christic blood there. There is, however, another side to this. So the blood angels have two major problems, the red thirst and the black rage. The red thirst essentially is an unquenchable thirst for human blood, which can be obtained through several means, more or less voluntary donations by the Legion serfs. However, it's apparently not as fun as drinking the blood of the freshly slain captive, so which also leads back to human sacrifice, etc. The other problem they have is the Black Rage. So they are they are angelic. They are noble warriors. They adhere to they have a strict sense of honor. But every now and then they lose control and they start murdering everybody. So they try to keep those two things under control with varying success. They try to keep it a secret, but by now in the High Lords of Terror definitely are aware of what's going on there. Now the other Red Legion in the setting are the World Eaters. So they're also red, but they're on the other side. They're a traitor legion. They're led by the Primarch Angron, who is very angry, as again his name indicates. And he is now a demon prince of Khorne. So you can see it there. They also have the color red. The tone is slightly different, and all the other elements in the miniature gives one the impression, well, one would rather not go out for a pint with them. So these fellows look stern, holy, etc., and they look very dangerous. They're made to look very dangerous, and more than the Blood Angels, they're a legion of close combat, so they virtually never use guns. They need to feel the blood of their enemies. It's very important. So the Red Space Marines. So both are red, but there's huge differences. But there's also surprisingly quite a bit in common. So the Blood Angels associated to the blood of Christ. The World Eaters to the bad blood, the blood of war, which is yet again different from the impure blood mentioned earlier. It's the rider of the apocalypse, representing war, is very often depicted as red. So it's the war of violence, the war that leads to death. So there's an opposition there. However, they both have something in common, which is loss of control. Or, well, as mentioned, the Blood Angels lose control every now and then. The World Eaters don't have much self-control to begin with, so we mentioned that in the previous talk. But that's something that's very important to both these legions. And now quickly to the Red Gobbo. So the Red Gobbo first appeared in the variation on 40k Gorka Morka, which was closer to a board game than an actual war game, which was published in 1997 by Games Workshop. And the story of Gorka Morka, in a nutshell, a space hulk crashes on a planet, a space hulk populated by orcs crashes on a planet with a small pre-existing human population. Many years after that, the orcs are all at war with each other, and the humans start behaving like orcs. So everybody is orky, everybody speaks like orcs. The humans paint themselves green to look like orcs, and everybody has super fast vehicles, which are also painted red, incidentally, because the red ones go faster. And the Gretchins have a revolutionary committee led by the Red Gobbo. So the Gretchins are this subspecies within the orc realm. They are all exploited, sort of space goblins, to cut a long story short, and they no longer want to be exploited by the nasty orcs. So they create sort of an association, as if Gretchins are able to that, and this Red Gobbo arises, so sort of an orcish Lenin or Trotsky, if one so wants, who has clearly Soviet imagery on him. So for the Red Star, his medal is essentially a spoof of the hero of the Soviet Union decoration. So the aesthetics there is clearly, well, not just communist, but Soviet communism. And after Gorka Morka stopped being supported by Games Workshop, the Red Gobbo disappeared and reappeared in 2019, but with a major change as a variation on Santa Claus. So he in December every year, Warhammer community publishes stories, pictures of the red gobbo. There's often a miniature. And he is associated to gifts. You usually can register, sign up to the newsletter, and maybe win a combat patrol or something of the sort. And yeah, that's the red gobbo. So the iconography has shifted as well. So there's still the star, which is no longer red. And the bomb, so sort of the cliche thing of a revolutionary activist in the 19th or early 20th century. So that's still there, but all the other elements are gone. He's about Christmas, he's about gifts, he's about capitalism in many ways. He's not at all a revolutionary anymore. So that leads me to my conclusion. So yes, GW works with established color codes, uses it as an inspiration, makes a pastiche out of it, and goes way over the top. So Warhammer does its Warhammer thing to color code. So push it way over the top and go crazy within an actually fairly narrowly defined frame. Just go as far as you can. The interesting thing is that it's not just about contemporary references. So the blood of Christ, the Holy Grail is still present, but with less and less churchgoers, I suppose it simply has not as much of significance as it used to have. People are still vaguely familiar with it, I should say, but it's not something that is extremely present. The hypothesis is, of course, that the art directors at Warhammer, well, most notably John Blanche, are obviously people who have studied art, who have had classical education, who are very much familiar with all these themes. Color is also a major element of marketing. So I'd argue that it's no coincidence that the poster boys are blue, or rather that it's the blue ones who get used as poster boys. This idea of familiarity, of somehow, expecting something good from the color blue is an important element. So various financial reports of Games Workshop have stressed that the key audience is first-time hobbyists, so children, young adults. Very often the first box one receives is bought by one's mother. So one also needs to appeal to women in their 40s, which is not at all the people who actually then use the product, but they're the ones purchasing the product. They're the ones who settle the bill. So one needs to make it in many ways palatable. One can't go too much over the top with the gateway drug, and afterwards, once people are hooked on them, one can go crazy, obviously. If there's time, I'd love to talk about it. It might be at the cost of certain, to the expense of certain satirical elements in Warhammer. So is Warhammer satire? Essays have been written on the topic. It's an evening filling topic. So let's not get lost there, but I should say that it's very hard to look at a Space Marine and go, oh, that's a fascist. I absolutely don't want to be like that when I use it as purely for fun and it's a parody and they're cool, but I don't self-identify remotely. Space Marines are also prominently used in Warhammer Alliance iconography. So I'd be very interested to hear the teacher's opinion on the topic. Last but definitely not least, so color coding also acts as a soft guideline for hobbyists. So you buy your box of new Space Marines and you figure out what am I going to do with them, how am I going to paint them, and you say you choose a chapter and you say, okay, this chapter has that color. Okay, but within color, you have a great range, well, not only a great range of products, which you can purchase, but you can mix, you can adjust hue, you can adjust saturation. And if you were just given a miniature as a beginner and not told anything about what to do with it, I suppose it would be much more daunting than, okay, I'm going to paint it red somehow, I'm going to paint it blue somehow. it narrows your room to maneuver, but it also sets you a fairly defined goal, which you can then define as you desire. So that would be my conclusion, and I will gladly take your questions and comments.